Today's lesson is Seeing into Deep Space. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And today we're going to be talking about astronomy, which is basically the study of stars and galaxies and the universe. And, of course, nowadays we have that James Webb Space Telescope that can look into deep space, which means it can see really, really far into space and, I guess, really far into the past as well.
Right. And I'm really excited about this because I actually just watched a documentary about this, and I watched how they prepared the telescope and how hard it was to make sure everything worked on Earth, because once they launched the telescope into space, it had to be able to open up by itself because they had a sun shield and also the mirrors folded in. So when it got into orbit, it has to open back up, and then things about the durability of it. And I also found out that it will only be able to operate, well, originally they thought that it would only be able to operate for 5 years, but now they're estimating that it could last 10 years up in space. So very interesting.
It is very interesting. And of course, as you know, they had to get it right the first time because, like when they launched Hubble many years ago, well, it had some problems and they had to send astronauts to the Hubble Space Telescope to actually do some repairs. But they did not have that option with the Webb telescope because it was going to be so far away. There was no way they could send somebody to fix it if something went wrong. So they had to get it right. And it looks like they were successful. Well, let's find out more about the James Webb Space Telescope in today's lesson. Let's listen to the first part, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
Seeing into deep space. Ever since they were invented in the early 1600s, telescopes have been helping us make sense of the universe. Since then, the technology has come a long way. In the 20th century, we even began sending telescopes into space. The latest of these space telescopes, the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, was launched in 2021. It is the largest, most powerful space telescope ever built, allowing us to see farther than we ever have before.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 telescope， 它的意思是望远镜。例如 At night, Thomas enjoys looking at the stars through his telescope. 晚上时 Thomas 喜欢透过望远镜看星星。或者 Tina saw the shooting star through her telescope. Tina 透过她的望远镜看到了流星。接着看到片语 make sense of 名词，表示理解或是了解复杂或不寻常的人事物。例如Lester couldn't make sense of the instructions even after reading them several times. Lester 即使看了好几遍，还是无法理解这个操作指南。或是 Gabe couldn't make sense of his math homework. Gabe 无法了解他的数学作业。下一个看到片语 come a long way， 它的意思是有大幅的进展，或是有显著的进步。例如 You have come a long way since your first day at school. 自从第一天上学以来，你有很大的进步。也可以说 Justin's piano skills have come a long way since he first started playing. Justin 的钢琴技能从他开始弹琴以来已有很大的进步。再来介绍动词 launch， 表示发射火箭、发布，也可以是推出的意思。我们可以说 The rocket launched the astronauts from Earth to the space station. 火箭将太空人从地球发射到太空站。
Okay, so if you have a telescope in space, well, you can see into deep space. I suppose if you have a telescope here on Earth, well, you can see like planets and things like that, and you can see galaxies like the Andromeda Galaxy or the Sombrero Galaxy or whatever. That's probably pretty easy with a telescope that you can have in your backyard. But if you really want to see into deep space, if you want to look far, maybe as far back as the Big Bang or something, then you need something like the James Webb Space Telescope.
Right, and that's exactly why it was invented, and its mission is to try to capture the moments in our space history, okay? So let's talk about the first part of our article today. Ever since they were invented in the early 1600s, telescopes have been helping us make sense of the universe. So what a telescope is basically a sort of device that allows us to see into space, into somewhere far away, using glass and different mirrors and the lights and the way the light bounces off the glass and the mirrors. It allows things that are far away to appear closer to us so that we're able to see it. And that is why when we look into a telescope, when we look into space, we can see things that are in space as if it was right in front of our eyes.
Exactly, and I should mention that a telescope is not the same thing as binoculars. If you're trying to look into space, you're using a telescope, which is usually long and white, and we put it on top of a tripod. And binoculars are used to, say, go bird watching or something like that, or maybe military commanders will have binoculars so they can study the troops in the field. Binoculars, of course, will have one thing in front of each eye. We'll have two kind of telescopes mixed together. That would be binoculars. But if you're studying astronomy, you're going to be using a telescope. And, of course, we've got telescopes to help us make sense of the universe, to try to understand the universe. And since then, since the early 1600s, the technology has come a long way. If something comes a long way, well, it could come a long way. Like my friend from Texas came a long way to visit me here in Taiwan. But in this particular case, it just means it has progressed a lot. It has improved by leaps and bounds.
In the 20th century, we even began sending telescopes into space. So I guess this would be the Hubble telescope, right? And the latest of these space telescopes, the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, was launched in 2021. So this is the latest telescope that we've sent into space, or we've launched into space. So the word launch is basically to send something off at a very fast speed, and you're sending something off to do its mission or to complete a mission or to achieve something. And sometimes when you're launching something, it's also when you're trying to throw something really far away. And launch can also be used to describe to start something.
Right, to launch an advertising campaign, for example. But if we talk about rockets going into space, we launch those rockets like Apollo 11 was launched way back in 1969 and went to the moon. And this particular telescope was launched. It began its journey from the Earth into space in 2021, which is just about 3 years ago. It is the largest, most powerful space telescope ever built, allowing us to see farther than we ever have before. So yes, indeed, this is something to get excited about. It's a huge telescope. It's pretty weird looking if you look at the pictures of it. Geez, that does not look like a telescope at all, but it is a telescope, and it's in space, and it's very powerful, and we can see farther than we ever have before. And yeah, if you compare some of the new pictures that this telescope has taken compared with the Hubble Space Telescope, the difference is like night and day.
Right. They have taken some very beautiful and amazing, breathtaking images. Okay, that takes us to the end of part 1. Let's listen to part 2.
Located 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth in the darkness of space, the JWST sees by using 18 massive mirrors to collect and focus light from distant stars. Unlike previous space telescopes, however, the JWST is able to detect a special type of light, infrared. This allows us to see things we could not see before, such as stars and planets hidden within vast, thick clouds of dust, and observe previously seen objects in a whole new way.
第二部分看到形容词 massive， 它的意思是巨大的或是庞大的。例如 The elephant has a massive body and strong tusks. 大象有着庞大的身躯和坚固的象牙。又或者说 The earthquake caused massive damage to the historic city. 地震对那座有历史意义的城市造成巨大的损害。
Okay, so let's talk specifically about the James Webb Space Telescope, located 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth in the darkness of space. The JWST sees by using 18 massive mirrors to collect and focus light from distant stars. So this particular telescope is not orbiting the Earth like the Hubble telescope is. This one's farther away in space. It's quite far. It's at some sort of balance point in space, so it can basically never be in the Earth's shadow or in the moon's shadow. That's why it's so far away. And yes, it can see by using those big mirrors. Those mirrors are massive, which means they're really, really big, and they collect light from distant stars and distant galaxies and then focus it in a certain place so that we can see those things.
Unlike previous space telescopes, however, the JWST is able to detect a special type of light. Infrared. Okay, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of infrared. We actually use infrared a lot right here on Earth. For example, our remote controls have infrared. So our remote, it will have an infrared light that talks to our TV and we're able to turn it on. And basically what an infrared is, it's a light that we're not able to see. It's at the end of the red color, so kind of why we have red in here. And there's a lot of technology that has been developed from infrared light. For example, a lot of people, if they got injured, they also use these infrared light lamps that they could put over their injury, and that makes them feel better, and that heat from the infrared can help them heal. So that's basically what infrared is, and this JWST is able to detect infrared in space.
Right, so again, infrared is beyond the red end of the visible light spectrum, whereas ultraviolet is beyond the purple or blue end of the visible spectrum. You get the idea. But this one can detect infrared light, and that gives it a special ability to see things that we cannot see with the naked eye. Yes, indeed, this allows us to see things we could not see before, such as stars and planets hidden within vast, thick clouds of dust, and observe previously seen objects in a whole new way. So yeah, we can't really see the center of the galaxy because it's blocked by cosmic dust, but this particular telescope might be able to see the big black hole at the middle of the Milky Way galaxy because it sees with infrared light.
So what's interesting about the James Webb Telescope is that it uses infrared light, and when the images come back to Earth, they have these photo specialists that actually have to adjust the lighting of the photos that are taken by the telescope. So the photos actually come back in black and white, but the photo specialists, they will use the color spectrum and try to adjust it so that we are able to use the different spectrums of the light to see the different things that we are not able to see with our eyes. But the telescope was able to capture it.
Okay, we're at the end of the second part of our lesson for today. It's time now to move on to the third part. We'll wrap things up right now.
After little more than 2 years in orbit, the telescope has already made several incredible discoveries, including several planets, black holes, and some of the oldest galaxies in the universe. Just imagine what amazing things it will discover for us in the years to come.
第三部分我们介绍形容词 incredible， 表示惊人的、令人难以置信的，也可以是极好的意思。例如 I learned so many incredible things when I was at the museum. 我在博物馆时学到了很多惊人的事。最后看到名词 galaxy， 它表示星系。我们可以说 Dan hopes that scientists will discover life in another galaxy. Dan 希望科学家能在另一个星系发现生命。
Okay, so again, we're talking about the James Webb Space Telescope. And after little more than 2 years in orbit, the telescope has already made several incredible discoveries, including several planets, black holes, and some of the oldest galaxies in the universe. So here we're describing this particular telescope as being in orbit. Okay, it's not actually in direct orbit around the Earth. It's actually quite complicated. It's in a position in space where it doesn't really move, but it still orbits around the sun at the same rate that the Earth does. If something's in orbit, it is circling another object in space. So we could say the Hubble telescope is in orbit around the Earth.
The telescope has already made several incredible discoveries. When something is incredible, it is something that is so amazing, so astonishing, that it's hard for people to believe that it's real.
Right, so it's made these several incredible discoveries, and we've got some examples here. It has discovered lots of planets orbiting around other stars. Those are sometimes called exoplanets, or they simply are called exoplanets, planets that orbit stars besides the sun. We've got black holes that it has discovered, and it's also discovered really old galaxies. A galaxy, of course, is a large collection of stars together, like we live here in the Milky Way galaxy, and of course there's a galaxy that you can see with a telescope or even with your naked eye, the Andromeda galaxy, which is one of the closest galaxies to the Milky Way galaxy.
Right. So the James Webb telescope was able to capture so many new and incredible things. And with all this new information, it could really help scientists understand space and also understand our Earth a lot better. And one of the key things that the telescope is trying to do is to see if they can find signs of certain elements on other planets, such as carbon dioxide and even water. So this is one of the key missions that the James Webb telescope is supposed to do.
It is quite fascinating indeed. I think something else that's kind of interesting about this telescope is that it's got one side that faces the sun and the other side faces away. So there's a huge temperature difference there. Like one side is like really, really hot, and then the other side is really, really cold.
And I think what's also really interesting about the telescope is when you look at it, you have these 18 massive mirrors, but at the bottom of it, you also have this sunshade because it needs to be able to take out some of the light sometimes when it's capturing images, or else if you have too much light, then you won't really be able to capture certain things that they wanted to capture. And it's really amazing to see how they designed it all and how they went into the research of creating this sunshade, because when you really look at it, it looks like a really thin piece or 5 layers of thin pieces of tinfoil. But it's pretty amazing how they created a special type of material that is able to last in space for many years.
Hopefully it will last for many years. It does look quite fragile there, the way it's made, but hopefully it will be long-lasting and durable, and it will be able to provide lots of pictures for us. Just imagine what amazing things it will discover for us in the years to come. So we've already made some very fascinating discoveries with planets and black holes and galaxies and things like that. They might discover other things, maybe like comets and quasars and other fun stuff like that. So yes, we certainly have a lot to look forward to in regard to the James Webb Space Telescope. Okay, we're at the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文向我们介绍了微波太空望远镜，那么 telescope 这个字就是望远镜，我们这边来补充它的字首字根。首先 tele 这个字首呢，它有远方、远的、距离遥远或是在远处的意思。那很多通讯相关的单字都跟这个字首有关，像 television 是电视， telecommunications 是电信等等。那么在 telescope 这个字当中，它的字首 tele 表示远方， scope 当名词可以指范围领域，不过它当字尾的时候表示观测仪器。那用来观测远方的仪器，也就是望远镜咯。我们顺便补充几个有相同字首的单字。第一个是 telegram， 字首 tele 表示远方， gram 表示书写，合在一起 telegram 就表示电报。那第二个补充的是 teleprompter， 它的字首 tele 表示遥远，那么 prompt prompt 这部分表示提示提词， er 是名词字尾，合在一起 teleprompter 就是电子提词器或者是自动提词机。第三个补充的是 telepathy， 它的字首 tele 表示遥远， path 这部分表示感受感知， y 是名词字尾，那在远处就能感受感应到事物，我们这样应该可以联想到 telepathy， 它是表达心电感应或者是远距感应。好，那么课文第二部分提到微波太空望远镜能够侦测到红外线，那这让我们能够看见以前看不到的东西。文中是用到 This allows us to 来表达这让我们能够怎么样怎么样。这边要整理一下 allow somebody to 加原形动词的用法。首先这个动词 allow 它表示允许准许，那常常会用 allow somebody to do something 这样去表达允许某人做某事，或者是呢也可以用被动语态 somebody be allowed to 再加原形动词去表达某人被允许做某事。举例来说 You're not allowed to take photos here， 这里禁止拍照。那我们还可以用到 allow somebody to 加原形动词表达出让某人得以怎么样能够怎么样，就像课文里面的用法。好，那我们看个例句 This app allows you to create your own emoji， 这款应用程式让你可以创造自己的表情符号。好，那这边也顺便补充一下片语动词 allow for 的用法。第一个呢，我们可以用 allow for 去表达使变的有可能，像是 The new system allows for more efficient data processing， 新的系统能让资料处理更有效率。第二个，我们可以用 allow for 表达考量到什么，把什么计算在内，例如Please arrive early, allowing for traffic and parking. 考量到交通状况及停车，请提早抵达。好，那么以上今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Telescope. Loretta pointed the telescope at Mars, hoping to see details of the planet's surface. Launch. The space company plans to launch another rocket next month. Massive. When the tiny mouse crawled out of the shadows, it scared the massive elephant. Orbit. It takes the moon just over 27 days to complete its orbit around Earth. Incredible. Stanley's incredible speed enabled him to win the race easily. Galaxy. Our home galaxy is thought to contain around 100 billion stars.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time for our discussion starter for today. The question is, have you ever used a telescope to look at objects in space? If yes, what did you see? If no, what would you like to see through a telescope?
Yes, I've had the opportunity to use a telescope in South Africa. An astronomy professor actually brought in a telescope for us to look through, and I was able to see different planets, and also I saw a really clear image of our Milky Way.
Pretty cool. Well, I did have a chance to use a telescope one time. My roommate actually won one in some kind of competition or something like that, but it was very complicated to use. I had no idea what I was doing because if you point a telescope at objects in space, you got to move the telescope because the Earth is moving and those objects will soon disappear from view, so you need to be be adjusting the telescope constantly, and I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't see anything.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.